Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Bro. We're going to do a ranking of all the Oscar-nominated documentaries from 2021. I actually feel bad ranking them because basically all of these are great and I'm going to enjoy speaking about each one of them. So number 5 is The Mole Agent. Like I said, The Mole Agent is a really good film. I love documentaries with no narration. This is a very cinematic quality. It even plays into the detective genre, its compositions and how it's lit, and the music. But I think where it finds itself is completely different, and that's what's interesting about this movie. The one thing that's consistent throughout is that it's very funny. Probably one of the funniest documentaries I've seen, and I kind of wish I saw it in a theater with lots of old people who would like laugh at it, because I feel like they'd be really down and get all the jokes. It's cinematic, it's very sweet, it's warm, it's playful, and the unexpected turn in the film is due to its very charismatic subject. This guy is like weirdly inspirational, and you just kind of get to know him by what he does and how he interacts with people. And you kind of see that this film is changing because it's just absorbing like his personality. And I think what the movie ends up as is very different from where it started. But there's so many great moments in it, whether they're just like funny or really heartwarming, that I would definitely recommend this film. My number 5 is also The Mole Agent, and I really enjoyed it. It's shot and edited in a way where sometimes you don't even feel like you're watching a documentary. It's snappy and light in tone, and like you were saying, it's kind of fun to watch it find its own direction as it goes on, because I think that the documentary filmmakers went in thinking that they were going to find something interesting one way, but then, the journey becomes more interesting than the destination. It does make you kind of appreciate the elderly a little more and, wish that people would visit their grandparents a little more, I guess, if there's any like takeaways from it. My number 4 is Crip Camp. Also strange because I didn't know that I liked it less than the movies above here, because it feels like a movie that could be, number 2 or 3 of my favorite. Crip Camp probably has the most generic style where it's using archival footage and narration to put together a story. It's sort of a story in 2 parts, where at first it kind of hones in on what the Crip Camp is and how that works. It's a very beautiful part of the story. And then it sort of broadens its scope to do a whole thing on the civil rights movement and sort of encompass that in probably 45 minutes. In a way, I like when documentaries are a little bit more contained and refined, but I understand why they broadened it like that. They really wanted to bring as much visibility to that movement as possible. It ends up being a very inspiring, enjoyable, entertaining, and heartfelt, even tear-jerky film by the end. And a lot of people will cry at the end of this movie. It definitely earns those tears. I think this is one of the more crowd-pleasing documentaries we have, and I wouldn't be surprised if it won. My number 4 is Collective. This is like the spotlight of documentaries. Although it's not really like the inspiring tale of, journalists who fought to get what they wanted and they got exactly that. It's a movie about the struggles of fighting for a better world and fighting for change. It's this work that like somebody needs to be doing because of how important it is. Like lives are at stake in this documentary. And these journalists are heroes, even though like what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, which we get a very close look at, is just kind of sitting around tables and looking through documents. So the movie is very dry and procedural, but it's understandable why it is that way. Something about it it didn't resonate with me the same that it did with others. I did really like the end. I thought there were some impactful moments in the documentary. My number 3 is My Octopus Teacher. This film is narrated from one perspective, and it's done so very beautifully. It's a very subjective film about somebody's experience exploring a new world. It's almost like the movie Avatar with like an undersea world that you've never understood before. Ultimately, this is like Planet Earth, but much more contained and through and through a love story. The footage in it is stunning. The world is completely immersive. It's such a soulful exploration of falling in love with, another creature and with nature. But it's not Shape of Water, don't worry. I do make it sound that way. The one thing I wish it did was go a little bit more into its subject and what their life was like during this period of exploration, why they were doing it. It almost felt like they blocked out that part of his life, or maybe he didn't want to share it. It was obviously there, like, oh, we want to know why this person is so invested in this thing and what his family is like and if it kind of helps him heal. And we don't really get that perspective. I was really wanting that from the movie, and I think it could have gone just a level higher. But ultimately, you do take it a little bit more in face value as just like this beautiful story. It really is amazingly shot and edited and narrated. It's overall extremely well done. Definitely check this one out. My number 3 is The Octopus Teacher. This is a really, really immersive film that gave me an appreciation for underwater life that I normally don't have. You know, I don't really want to think about the bottom of the ocean, and I don't want to touch the bottom of the ocean when I'm swimming. But this film shows that you could, you know, find any spot in the world and just develop a deep appreciation for like the ecosystem of that world. And that's what this man does with great cinematography and immersive sound design and a good score. It really brings you in there, and it does no less than give you a greater appreciation for the planet that we live on. And the subjective perspective where you're kind of witnessing it through this guy's eyes makes it stand out over any other nature documentary that you would normally watch. This film could definitely win the category. I think it's widely appealing. I mean, ask IMDb, they seem to think so. It just won the PGA. We'll see what BAFTA does. But this one's actually looking like it could be a frontrunner, and I would not be opposed to it winning. I do think this one could win also. My number 2 is Collective. Collective is another film with no narration that almost makes you wish you had it, because you really have to be vigilant and follow along with every conversation that's happening. A lot of it probably went over my head, but it's fun, like just kind of feeling like you're in the room and picking up pieces of this thing that's happening and unfolding before your eyes. It's sort of a classic story of injustice in the face of giant corporations that are motivated only for profit and self-interest, that have their hands in the pockets of government. It's sad because this is such a shocking story, but at the same time, it's no surprise that it can take place in the world we live in today. And it ends up being a unique take on what heroes look like and what form that can take. It's a great tribute to those individuals who fight like that, and it's also a really sad kind of wake-up call, because you don't really get that victory in the end. Or maybe the victory is just moving the needle ever so slightly. And it's sort of this painful grind that like the, you know, quote unquote proletariat is all a part of. It really does represent our world where we have like this weaker middle class that is being exploited, and individual lives are so heavily impacted by, you know, the pennies that corporations might want to save or just shave off of their budget. And it has a really powerful last shot, which really like kind of knocks that film up a little bit for me. I think this is a great one. My number 2 is Crip Camp, which I really enjoyed on a lot of levels. This is a really inspiring film, but not necessarily in the way that you would think a movie about people with disabilities would be inspiring, where it's like, they can do just what other people can. It's much more than that. It's about like this small, janky camp where all these people with disabilities of all sorts came together and like had this kind of haven for each other. And then they left, looked at the outside world, and were able to see more clearly, like, it wasn't them who was broken. It was like this world outside of them. A lot of these members of this camp became activists because of these small moments at this camp. And they literally changed the world. I was watching the movie and thinking like, yeah, like every subway that I go to has an elevator in it, like automatic doors at grocery stores, like all this stuff it could be traced back to like this movement. So it gave me an appreciation for like just that, and also how important inclusivity is. You know, as simple as it sounds, like that's kind of what's beautiful about the human race in a way, is that we are not just victim to like survival, and we can like push forward, and we can push ahead of that notion of survival of the fittest. And it's also just sad that these people even had to fight to be able to access like basic transportation and the buildings around them. So I thought this was a really powerful documentary. I would definitely recommend anybody see it. I can't imagine anybody not liking it. My number 1 is Time, and I recommend this highly to everybody because I think it's so important. Its subject matter is, in a way, the prison industrial complex, and films like 13th have tackled this before, but no film has done it like Time has. And I almost think if you're really invested in this story and you have a heart and a soul, this could even be more of an impactful film than 13th. Unlike 13th, it's not didactic. It puts you in the shoes of the wife of an incarcerated individual. They also have children. So this is somebody's father. This is somebody's loved one. You experience what prison is like, not just for the people inside of it, who we may have less empathy towards because of what we're taught to think about them. And you end up realizing like there's all these victims of incarceration that is just the loved ones that cherish this individual and love them. It's a great way to just cut through all the noise of saying, you know, somebody deserves or doesn't deserve this sort of treatment. The movie clearly admits that people make mistakes, but it really does ask you to question, like, how can somebody deserve this much of their life in jail? It's really just about an individual who is fighting to free her husband because every year of their life counts. Every year is valuable. And the longer that they just wait in prison, the less time that they get to spend with them. And that time really means like the world. When we really think about it, like the time we spend with our loved ones is really everything. I could probably go on about this film. It really did inform my view of incarceration. Like, it's something that doesn't sit well with me. And after I watched this film, I was like, oh my God, this really doesn't sit well with me. Very deeply moving. The ending completely like destroyed me. I would love to see this win the Oscar. I'm not sure it will because it's very deliberate about what it shows you. And it kind of does give you that like sense of waiting. I think a film like My Octopus Teacher or Crip Camp might have the edge over something like this, but I can't recommend it highly enough. Time is also my number one. It tries to show us the weight of 20 years in under 90 minutes. And it also kind of makes you think about how weird it is that we use time as a currency for punishment. And there's so much about the prison system that just feels normal to us, especially if you're an American where we have like the most incarcerated individuals. And instead of talking about like how big that number is, we're focused on one family who's impacted by this issue. And it really is one of the most important films of the year and addresses a subject that we definitely need to give more attention to. But Time is not the kind of movie that just tells you what is wrong with a system. It shows you the moral dilemma behind it. And the film also just highlights like those universal basic desires and the joys that we all deserve to have in life. So it's just a very human, universal story. It's like 80 minutes long. You should just definitely give it your time. The last 5 minutes is absolutely incredible and some of the best cinema I've seen this year. I also follow Fox and Rob on Instagram so that my heart can be warmed whenever I open the app. Once again, it almost feels pointless to have ranked a lot of these just because they're all great, and I would recommend to anybody that they just go out and watch all 5 of them. Let us know if you've seen any of these films and what did you think of them. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Is somebody documenting you?